We're all at Binkley Healing Center in Ventura, California, talking about tonight about osteoporosis. But before we get into that, I was going to just everyone notice this scar, a little line above my eye here? You all didn't notice probably. I was thinking about borrowing somebody's foundation to cover that up, but I thought, you know what? I got a better idea. I'm going to use my own experience to demonstrate how the human body can heal itself better than expected if you take good care of yourself. If you every day take the nutrients you need for your immune system, the protein levels that you need to heal and repair every tissue, all the things your body needs every day to heal and repair itself. So what happened was last Friday, for the first time in a few months, I got my bike out. And welcome, have a seat. Uh, I like to ride my bike to work. I'm not going to strap my bike onto a car and drive someplace to get out and ride. If I'm going to ride my bike, I'm going to ride it to work, shopping, for transportation. That fits into my schedule better. I love doing it. I live about 3 miles from here. And the most fun part of that ride is the last couple of blocks from Cemetery Park down here. It's a downhill slope. You can get going really fast, and I can cool off right before I come in. And that's the most fun part. So I was doing that last Friday, coming down the hill, going about 35 miles an hour, which is really fast on a bike. I passed another cyclist in the bike lane, but then I was coming up to where I usually turn into my driveway, and there was a parked car. So I'd normally go around that, but I didn't want to look back and see if he was still, I didn't want to, bump him. So instead, I quickly turned into the driveway next door. And the driveway there, the ramp between the driveway and the sidewalk, was much steeper than this one. Never gone in that one before. And I hit that, and I have a kind of a funny looking bike. The wheel on the front is really small, and it hit that and turned. And then my back tire just slid out from underneath me. I didn't know why that was happening until later. When I got on my bike 2 hours later to go home, it was flat. I had aired up the tire to 110 pounds before. I thought, I knew it was flat. I got to be careful it's not going to go flat again immediately. Usually it'd be hissing or something if it was leaking. So anyway, for those two reasons, I went flying over the handlebars, mainly hit my knee, a couple scrapes in my hand, and then my head just tapped the concrete like that. Well, yes. No helmet. Don't go there. No. You can hit, you can get in the car. Yeah, no, you should. You should. If you plan, especially if you plan on hitting the ground. But yeah, let's go ahead and so I'm going to have, since for the viewers that are not here, I'm going to have Victoria show the scar on my head, but can you see that? Yeah. All right. So you see that? I didn't have a concussion. I came in, I had a full schedule. I came right in. Everyone was concerned. I said, please, it's embarrassing. We've got a busy schedule. Let's do what we need to do. But it wouldn't stop bleeding. I put a Band-Aid on it. Well, when I got home, it was a full thickness tear. I could see the bone underneath and the underside of the skin above and below. So yeah, that's something that should require stitches, right? That's kind of definition. I didn't want to do that either. I was busy. I had stuff to do. So I just held the two pieces really close together, taped it, and then I have these the waterproof Band-Aids that stick really well, and I put that over there, and I left it on, and that was Friday afternoon. And you're supposed to change it every day, but I have confidence in my body's ability to heal itself. I don't recommend this, but I didn't take it off till yesterday, and you can see it's healed. It's not bleeding. It doesn't hurt. There might be a little bit of a scar, but it usually, if you get a full thickness tear like that, you get stitches and you leave them on for 2 weeks, maybe 10 days, and this is 5 days. So, that's just one example. People that get colds and flus, just taking vitamin D can make it much more likely for you to have a cold or a flu for a couple of days instead of a couple of months or a couple of weeks. That's just a couple of examples. This one doesn't come up that often. I haven't crashed a bike since I was in 4th grade, but anyway, that's just one example that I thought I'd share. How your body can heal itself from anything. If I feel like I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit, but more and more examples when you actually see that in a real life circumstance, I think it motivates people to actually do what it takes to take better care of yourself, so that you're ready for whatever comes your way. So a great example of that is osteoporosis. We all build up most of our bone density in our late 20s, from about 25 to 30, 32, 33. That's when you're building all of the bone density that you're ever going to have for the rest of your life. So one of the things I don't want to forget to say about that is, any of you have grandchildren or grandchildren, they're in their 20s and drinking soda. Because there was a really good study that came out a few years ago that it was cheerleaders, who were fit, they're getting the weight bearing exercise, otherwise reasonably healthy. If they can do, all the things that cheerleaders do, you would think they're in pretty good shape. But just drinking one soda a day compared with cheerleaders, same group age people that weren't doing that, increased their risk of osteoporosis later in life by like 60% or something, a huge increase because of the acid in the soda that, leaches your bones. You want an alkaline environment to build and heal and repair most tissues. So yeah, eating an acidic diet, a lot of meat, a lot of soda, a lot of coffee, a lot of tea. Coffee and tea are good for you, but if you drink, pots of it as opposed to a couple of cups, these are some of the things that it can interfere with. So the most important thing is to understand that your bone density is mainly built in your late 20s, and then it starts to decline in your early 30s. But most doctors never test your bone density until your 60s or 70s, right? Has anybody ever had a bone density scan earlier than that, in your 50s? Earlier, what was the earliest you had? 55. Okay, so that's earlier than most. Most people don't get it till 65. So why is that? Well, the drugs they give you for osteoporosis and osteopenia, low bone density, are terrible. No one should take those. Fosamax, Boniva, Avista, the shots. Um, 6 or 7 of them are all the same class, called bisphosphonates. We're going to talk about those. Boniva, Fosamax, those. There's a couple of other ones, but none of them really have a good track record for actually making your bones stronger. So yeah, this is what healthy bone and osteoporotic bone looks like. So at first glance, it might not look that much difference, but if you look up here and see the size of these holes and the thickness of the matrix around that, and compare that to this and the pieces that are missing, that's an electron microscope of actual bone, normal bone, and bone that has become less dense from osteoporosis. So the risk factors are age 65 and older, previous fracture. So this is why I like to talk about, you can do a bone density scan. If you ask your doctor to order it, they probably will. If they won't, I can get a bone density scan for about $150. In fact, a couple of years ago, it had gone down to $85. I used to send everybody to Grossman Imaging in town, but he retired or sold his business to Radnet. What's the place in Camarillo? Rolling Oaks. Rolling Oaks Radiology is the only game in town now for private pay. X-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, whatever. So it's harder to get in. I'm not sure what the price is. Somewhere, probably no, it's probably still more than $150. Not that expensive if you can't get your insurance to pay for a DEXA scan bone density test, then we can make that happen. So, but yeah, if you're in your 50s or your 40s and you have a fracture for no reason, like you just had a minor fall, if you've broken any bone and it surprised you, right? You didn't have a major injury, a major trauma that anybody would break their bone, then that means you're more likely to have osteoporosis, and that's a good reason to do a DEXA scan earlier. Find out so that you can start healing and repairing that bone. Smoking dramatically increases your risk. Taking corticosteroids. So these are the drugs that you get when you have an acute trauma, and they do the injection for inflammation, to heal a muscle tear. For several autoimmune conditions, they give you steroid injections. Those increase your risk. Drinking more than 3 servings of alcohol a day. Slender build and falls. So falls is obvious. Slender build because to maintain your bone density, you also need a load on that bone. So astronauts that go up in space have to do a very specific type of exercise. They do this before they go, and then they have to do it while they're up there, because no matter what they do, they're going to come back with low bone density. And then they have to build that back up. That's a well-known fact, because there's no gravity. There's no load on your bones. So your bones are designed to to give your muscles something to attach to and something to pull on. Your spine provides, something that keeps you from falling over. The pelvis, all these bony protuberances, these are all places where muscles attach. And your bone will continue to stay dense if you use those muscles, especially with just a little bit of impact, weight-bearing exercise. If you don't, it won't. So slender women have less load just because they're carrying less weight, have less load on their bones. So among the most common people that get it as they get older, unless they're doing some kind of weight-bearing exercise. So it's important for all of us to do a little bit of walking, or if someone has osteoporosis, especially if they have osteopenia or early signs of osteoporosis, just something as simple as doing this, or jumping rope, or walking and just having heavy steps when you walk. Just a little bit of impact that signals your brain to keep your bones strong. Weightlifting, any kind of weightlifting, especially with your arms and your legs, is safe to do for most people, even when they're older. Something as simple as doing geriatrics. Older people, if they are not going to go to a gym, I'll tell them to do something as simple as just doing squats like this. Squat down and especially really slowly come up, because that builds and maintains the biggest muscles in your body, in your legs, and that will keep the bones in your femur, among others, that are the most likely one to break when you fall. Keep the load on that to help keep those bones strong. Oh, but so slender build is one of the most common risk factors. But also, more recently, when I did a show on this on the radio 2 or 3 months ago, I did a show about osteoporosis, and a new study had come out around that time that showed that people that are morbidly obese also have an increased risk of osteoporosis. So they're carrying all kinds of weight every day to keep the load on their bones, but because of the hormonal changes and the inflammation associated with diabetes and the stress on the heart, lack of circulation, a combination of all those factors also can cause an increased risk of osteoporosis. So that's pretty new. So there's two types of bone cells: osteoclasts and osteoblasts. So osteoclasts with a C, clear away the old bone in yellow up there. Those are osteoclasts, in between an opening in the bone. And osteoblasts, these are all the real cells under an electron microscope. That's what an osteoblast looks like. That's what an osteoclast looks like. So the bone density drugs, Boniva, Fosamax, I think that's on the next slide. Nope, we'll come back to that. How do we go back? There we go. Boniva, Fosamax, that whole class where there's 6 or 7 different types, the most common osteoporosis drugs. If you read the literature on the pharmaceuticals website, mechanism of action: inhibit, destroy, remove osteoclast function. That's how they work. They just block the osteoclast, so you're not clearing away any old bone anymore. You're just building more and more new bone. Well, that'll make your DEXA scan look pretty. It will make your bones more dense, but what you want is for your bones to be strong. Density is part of that. Your bone is made of a collagen matrix, and it's about 30% collagen or 70% collagen matrix and 30% the minerals, especially mainly calcium, that adds and hardens and strengthens that. But if you were gonna, like, say you had a fire in your house, right? You're not, if there's a wall over here that's charred and all blackened, the wall's still standing, but you're not just going to drywall that blackened wood that's damaged by fire. You're going to remove that. You're going to clear away the old part of the structure and replace it with new strong wood, and then finish it inside and out to replace it and make it strong. So the similar thing applies to bone. If you don't clear away the old bone in the first place, then you're not going to make strong bone if you just keep shoving in new cells over and over again with no proper foundation, no proper scaffolding. And that's why people that take those drugs have a slightly increased risk of necrosis of the bone, death of the bone, in the jaw especially, even sometimes in the hip, the main part you're trying to protect. It can cause necrosis. It can cause early bone cell death because you're not preparing the structure, you're just increasing the density. And there's no test to measure the strength of your bones. All we have is the DEXA scan to measure the density. But the only test of strength is, if you fall, do you break? So I came flying over my handlebars. I like to say I'm in my late 50s. I'm 50'11". Allison Janney is a famous 6-foot star actress, and she likes to say she's 5'12". So I'm 50'11", flew over the handlebars, landed mostly on my knee. Nothing broke. I came in, had to put on some Band-Aids to stop the bleeding. Everything else is fine. Nothing hurts. That was 5 days ago. If you bend, you don't break. So if you want to keep your bones strong, you want to do weight-bearing exercise, a lot of people are deficient in protein. Some people also need to supplement collagen directly, but most of us, until we get to maybe 60s, 70s, or older, you can usually make all the collagen you need from food if you get adequate protein. Well, more and more people are, at least in the media you hear about, and in the food marketing, more and more people are aware that you need to have adequate protein in your diet. But I test people's their blood levels of protein every time they come in. And I see people every week, every month that are, when I do their case history, it looks like they're eating enough protein. What does enough protein look like? If you 2 or 3 good meals a day of protein. So a couple eggs for breakfast, a piece of chicken or a piece of fish for lunch and or dinner, something like that. Men, 100 grams of protein, women, 70 or 80 most. It depends on your body weight. But most people are eating a lot of protein, sufficient. Not everybody. That's why we test. But also, it's not uncommon for people to be eating adequate amounts of protein, and their blood level of protein is still low. They're not absorbing and assimilating the protein they're eating. Well, you're not going to make enough collagen to keep your bones strong if you're not getting that sufficient amount of protein. You're not going to heal and repair any part of your body as effectively as your body would be able to if you have adequate protein, not just swallowing it, but actually showing up in your blood. So that's an important thing to test. You'll never know. The medical range, there's this difference I always like to refer to. What is the difference between functional medicine and standard medicine? Standard Western medicine is the diagnosis and treatment of disease that you already have. And they use these broad ranges that are designed to determine whether or not you need Fosamax today, whether or not you need Lipitor for your cholesterol, whether or not you need high blood pressure medication. If you're just inside that range, you're fine. Go home. Come back when you're worse. When you're bad enough to need medical care. Yes.
Doctor, my wife and I take that protein or collagen peptides.
Okay.
Powder. Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Probably good. You could always, send me an email of the label, and I'll tell you for sure. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot of good products. There's more and more now. It is easier to find good products like that. And if you don't want to take a powder, bone broth is always an easy way to get, or a way. A lot of people don't like to. You're not going to want to do bone broth every day. It kind of gets pasty and you get sick of the taste. So yeah, if you're older, if we know that you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, low bone density, there's several things that I recommend for everybody, and sometimes collagen. So we're going to get to those, but here they are right here. So you need collagen. Most of the time you can make it from food, but if you're not, then you can supplement that. And for years, I did not recommend collagen supplements because they didn't seem to make that much difference. But in the past, since a little before, a little after COVID, uh, at least 2 of my favorite top shelf companies, Designs for Health and Orthomolecular Products, both came out with brand new collagen products. Each of them have 3 different strains of research-backed sources for collagen, and they work amazingly. They have data behind them, and every time I put somebody on one of those, they usually just want to keep taking it because we know it's going to keep your bones stronger, but especially women or men, it also tends to make your skin, hair, and nails stronger and younger because you're able to heal and repair those tissues quicker as well. When I crashed my bike last Friday, I took 2 scoops of collagen every day just to make sure I'm going to heal that as fast as possible. So that was one of the things that most people won't do. Did you have a question, Michelle?
Well, I was wondering, I've heard that if you eat vegetables with your meat or your protein, then it'll metabolize it.
It would. You can't really say that as a blanket statement. It would to know what the vegetables are. The difficulty with protein is enzymes that you need. So if you're eating sushi or any meat that's not cooked, heat destroys the enzymes that you need to digest meat. Beef is the hardest. It's just the densest. It requires the most energy, enzymes, and acid in your stomach to digest. White fish is very easy. Raw fish, sushi, still has the enzymes in it. But yeah, vegetables have enzymes in them. If you don't cook the vegetables, then it's easier to digest those and better for your gut. But yeah, there's no particular vegetable that makes it easier to digest meat that I'm aware of. It's mainly hydrochloric acid that most people are deficient in. We can test for that. When we test for that, when I do a regular blood panel, how it shows up that you're not making enough acid in your stomach is you have low protein and usually several of the electrolytes, low calcium, low chloride, um, low potassium. If you had several of those and low protein, that will always get better if you supplement hydrochloric acid, usually for 4, 5, 6 months. Then your stomach will get the nutrients that the parietal cells in your stomach need to make the acid. It'll start making more acid on its own again, and then you don't need to supplement it anymore. A lot of people are taking antacids, right? People that have GERD or reflux or any kind of pain in their esophagus, they're taking Tagamet or Tums or Prevacid or Prilosec or Omeprazole, any kind of acid blocking drug. You're deliberately diluting that acid you're not going to digest the protein that you're eating if you do that. You're also going to increase your risk of any kind of gut infection or even just mild dysbiosis, disrupting the good versus bad bacteria in your gut, because that acid in your stomach is your first line of defense against any bug getting into your digestive tract. And there's bacteria and viruses in the food that we eat every day. So you want to your stuff you want your people have heard people have heard it's important to keep your body alkaline, drink alkaline water, alkalize your system. That's important for every part of your body except your skin. Your skin needs to be slightly acidic. So if you use too much soap, that can cause a problem because soap is alkaline. Your stomach should be think of a boiling cauldron of strong, bubbling acid. That's what you want in your stomach to digest your protein, digest all those minerals, prepare your body even to vitamin B12 is difficult to absorb because you have to break it down in the stomach, which a lot of people don't do, and it's not actually fully absorbed to the very end of your small intestine. So you need protein, you need bioavailable calcium. 99% of the calcium in stores is calcium carbonate. I think we're coming to that, which is not good. And most people know you need adequate vitamin D for a whole host of reasons. If you don't, it is possible to take too much vitamin D. It very rarely happens. Very, very rarely happens. Most adults should be taking 5,000 international units, 5,000 IU a day to maintain a healthy level of vitamin D in your blood, and vitamin K too. So many people don't know about this. Vitamin D is essential to keep the calcium in circulation. Vitamin K is essential to deposit that calcium into your tissues. So weight-bearing exercise is important to stimulate. There's going to be a test, so we're reviewing now. Are you ready? Weight-bearing exercise to stimulate new bone formation, both build new bone with the osteoblast and clear away the old bone. They happen simultaneously. You need protein to make collagen, and so you can get that from food, or if you're lacking in it, you can supplement collagen directly. You need bioavailable calcium. So 99% of supplements in stores are calcium carbonate. Almost every one-a-day multivitamins are useless. Doesn't mean no one should take a multivitamin. The good ones are 4 capsules a day. The main reason to take a multivitamin is not for the vitamins. You taking a Centrum?
Doctor, say that again?
So a lot of people have heard that multivitamins are a waste of money. The one-a-day multivitamins are. Why are store shelves filled with one-a-day multivitamins? Because everyone wants one pill. Just give me one pill. That's all I'm going to take. Maybe I'll think about something else later. So the store shelves will always be filled with one-a-day multivitamins, and they are basically useless because you can get vitamins from food. You can get vitamin C and B vitamins from food. You can't get enough vitamin D. There's always a little bit of vitamin D in there. You can't get enough vitamin D from the sun either. That's a whole other talk. You cannot, the healthy level in your blood of vitamin D is 50 to 90. If you go to your MD and get the vitamin D test, never ask if it's okay. Say, what is the number? If it's 30, they'll say it's fine. Well, you're not going to get over a cold or a flu in 2 or 3 days if your vitamin D level in your blood is 30. You want it to be between 50 and 90. If you're prone to colds and flus, if you have a heart condition, autoimmune condition, if you're always sick and it takes long to heal, you want cancer, you want a risk of any of those things, you want to get your blood level up to like 60 or 70. So calcium carbonate is what's in most supplements, and that's what's in all the cheap multivitamins. You want to take a multivitamin for the minerals mainly. You can get vitamins from food. You need the minerals. Nobody gets enough minerals in their diet. They're not even, the minerals aren't in the soil that our vegetables are grown in as much as they used to be. So it's very difficult to get all the manganese and selenium and chromium and zinc and molybdenum and etc. from food. So that's what a multivitamin is for the minerals. And minerals in a one-a-day multivitamin, you can dig up dirt. That's where they get all the minerals from, ultimately come from the Earth's crust. So you can fit the RDA regular dose of those in a small one-a-day tablet. Doesn't mean it's going to enter your bloodstream. Doesn't mean it's going to end up in any of your cells. You can sometimes see those things on x-rays passing through your digestive tract. So the worst investment in any supplement is the one that just passes right through you. It's completely useless. That's why you hear all the time, you will hopefully continue to hear that nobody should take. If they say you shouldn't take a multivitamin, they're referring to one-a-day multivitamins. The good ones, Alpha Base is the one that I recommend to everybody for the past 25 years by Earth Molecular Products. It's not the only good one, but any good one is always going to be at least 3 or 4 capsules, because you can get the minerals to fit into to meet the RDA, which that's not enough either. The RDAs are useless. Hold their conversation. Ask me about that later. You need more than the RDA if you want to be healthy. Those are just enough to keep you from getting a severe deficiency disease like scurvy. Um, but yes, nobody gets enough minerals, and you can get them from the earth, the surface of the earth. But if you plant, you put a broccoli plant or a kale plant or some spinach in that same surface of the earth, then it sucks up those minerals and binds them in the parts of the vegetables that we eat. And then our bodies are very well equipped to break down and digest and assimilate the minerals in that form. So that takes up space. When you eat broccoli, do you count how many pieces of broccoli you eat? No, you know it's good for you. You're going to eat a normal serving. But to get minerals that are as close as we can to the plant-based forms to fit a good dose in some capsule form that you can take, it takes about 4 capsules to get a decent dose in a bioavailable plant-like form. So that's what a good multi is always for. Sorry? As many as you can get down. So yeah, hydroxyapatite is the only form that's actually shown to build new bone. Malate is a good form. Bisglycinate. The bisglycinate form is the best form in general of all the minerals. So iron bisglycinate, magnesium bisglycinate. This is one of the most well-researched forms that you're only going to get from a top shelf brand. You're never going to see that in most stores. That's a bioavailable form of calcium. And then a lot of cheap calcium does have calcium citrate. It's a little more expensive than calcium carbonate. It's a little better absorbed than calcium carbonate. And so the reactive calcium from Orthomolecular Products, the one that I use, who I've had several patients, the people that take Fosamax and Boniva, your doctor is happy if 2 years later, when they do another bone density scan, they're happy if it's not worse. They're expecting it to just slow down the progression of osteoporosis. And they don't tell you to do weight-bearing exercise, and they don't tell you to get adequate protein in your diet. They don't tell you to take adequate vitamin D or vitamin K. So that's why they assume it's going to get worse. If you do all those things, it can not only stop it, it can get better. So I've had many, especially women, who almost always stop. The next test will be no worse, even if they're in their 80s, late 80s. My mother, for example, she's 80. She'll be 84 in June. Hers is stable, has been for years. So they're hoping. I've had many who have reversed it. They start out osteoporosis, go back to osteopenia. Start out osteopenia, go back to normal bone density in 2 or 4 years. You can't check the bone density scan. There's no point in checking it earlier than 2 years. Most of the time, that's why it's standard is to test it 2 years later. But if you're doing all this stuff, I've had a couple where I've done it and said, I want to check it now. Okay, well, let's do it in a year. If you're doing all the things I'm talking about today, you can see a difference in a year. And there are also a couple of newer tests that I've done with one patient, she was in today, that measure in the urine certain metabolites of bone turnover, and they can measure whether or not it's improving without even doing another scan. So there are other ways to test that. So you need vitamin D to keep the calcium in circulation. No one gets enough from the sun. If you sunbathe naked with no sunscreen for 20 minutes 3 times a week in Southern California, you'll make about enough to get that 50 to 90 milligrams. Who does that? People think they walk around in short pants and short sleeves doing their gardening or walking around the block. They're getting all the sun they need. No, you have to expose your torso. There's not enough surface area. And even in Southern California, if you expose your torso with no sunscreen for 20 minutes, then you'll do it. But who does that? Right? Hardly anyone I know does that. So if you've got sunscreen on or clothes, you're not making any vitamin D in any significant amount. There's vitamin D in my milk. It says so right here. Okay, well, you need 5,000 units a day, so that's 50 glasses of milk every day, right? Or you can take one tiny little supplement. So vitamin K2. So there's vitamin K1 in dark green leafy vegetables. So if you eat a healthy diet, you're probably getting plenty of K1. K2 is the one that is much more effective. You need both, but most people get K1 in abundance if you eat any dark green leafy vegetables. Most people do not get any significant amount of K2. K2 was discovered in Japan. It's one of the reasons that the Japanese have a lower incidence of cardiovascular disease and lower incidence of breast cancer and a few other diseases because they get abundance of K2 in their diet from natto. And natto is a fermented soy product. So tofu is not fermented soy. Miso is fermented soy. Tempeh is fermented soy. But most people, they eat soy protein powder or tofu. That's the most familiar forms of soy, or eating just fresh edamame, not fermented, not getting any K2 from any of that. This natto is this disgusting porridge that the Japanese feed their children from childhood, that they just get used to it. And it looks kind of like, tapioca or oatmeal or something, but it's stringy and gooey. And that's the natto kinase enzymes that also help reduce cardiovascular disease, and vitamin K2. That is where all of the vitamin 2 comes from. It comes from fermented soy. And most of the companies that provide it are buying it from some supplier from Japan. So vitamin K2 keeps, vitamin D keeps the calcium in circulation. You need bioavailable calcium, vitamin D to keep it in circulation, vitamin K2 to make the final leg of the journey from circulation into the bone. Candace.
So pizza, which is I think has that.
Not much. Not much. Yeah, there's not really any significant food source except the natto porridge. Yeah. So most people are not going to eat. I have a cousin in LA. He's an actor, and he married a Japanese woman, and they serve it. So I tasted it one time. I wanted to be able to say I tasted it. It's pretty nasty. Not a significant amount. A serving of miso, no. It's just, it is a I like to tell people the difference between fermented and non-fermented soy, but there's really no form other than the porridge natto that you can get any significant amount of K in your diet. So that's just one that it's better to supplement it. All right, so what is the most important component for maintaining bone flexibility? Mineral density, calcium, the collagen matrix, or all of the above? What do you think? All of the above, absolutely. So Fosamax, Boniva, Reclast, Actonel, help osteoblasts build new bone, inject more calcium into your bones, help osteoclasts clear away the old bone, or kill osteoclasts to stop the removal of old bone and make your DEXA scans prettier. Exactly. That's why you don't want to take those drugs. The only people that actually do need to take those drugs are some cancer patients, because they're getting so much bone. If you have bone cancer, some other cancers that metastasize to bone, prostate, a couple other cancers that frequently metastasize to bone, those people need to take that because their body's ability to do that on its own has been surpassed. And sometimes it's temporary. So killing osteoclasts, the cells that clear out the old bone, does that make your bone density scan look better? Does it make your bones hard and less flexible? Does it cause necrosis in your jaw? All of the above, yeah. So calcium is a basic mineral, therefore all dietary sources of calcium are the same. True or false? Not even close. Adequate daily calcium intake to keep bones strong and resist fracture. Well, should you do 348 sesame seed buns, 75 bowls of spinach, 50 glasses of milk, or 2 capsules of a bioavailable calcium? Well, all of the above will work, but you get to pick which one works best for you. So the RDA for calcium is 500. Well, it is the 400 international units of vitamin D. Is that the US RDA? Is it the standard amount in nearly all multivitamins? Is it less than 1/10 the amount needed for bone health, prevention of colds, flus, and many types of cancer? Or all of the above? Which do you think?
All of the above.
All of the above. Yeah, it's a tiny amount. So the RDAs were designed in the 20s when vitamins were discovered. Vital amine. They discovered these things that some people are not getting enough of in food. So scurvy, sailors were not getting enough vitamin C. So you need 60 milligrams of vitamin C to prevent your teeth from falling out, to prevent scurvy. Is that going to keep you healthy? No. But most one-a-day multivitamins, that's what they have. That is the RDA for vitamin C. They don't even make 60 milligram vitamin C supplements. They're 500 or 1,000. Don't buy 500s if you're going to buy vitamin C. That's one of the things you don't need to get from a top shelf company. If your stomach can tolerate ascorbic acid, you can buy it at Costco. It doesn't matter. Some people need a buffered form if it's hard on their digestive system. Some people need different forms to get a large amount of it for certain reasons. But apart from that, just get 1,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid from anywhere. Don't bother with the 500s. If you need more than is in your multivitamin, you might as well take 1,000. So 400 IUs. What disease does that prevent? Rickets. Rickets is the disease where your bone, and osteomalacia. Rickets in a child, osteomalacia as you get older. It's insufficient vitamin D to make strong bones, and they'll collapse. Well, there are kids. There's a vitamin D council. Um, a medical doctor in San Luis Obispo started, and he circulates and disseminates literature on vitamin D from all over the world. And he gets letters from physicians all over the country, and there are documented cases, not infrequent, of parents bringing their children in who've been breastfed with a mother from a mother who doesn't have sufficient calcium, and they show up and they've got multiple little fractures, and they take their kids away because they think they're being abused, and they don't test their vitamin D. They don't test the vitamin D level in the kid, and they don't test the vitamin D level in the mother. If they do, it's because their bones are collapsing from just moving around or just picking them up because they don't have vitamin D in that mother's breast milk. So it's critically important for bones. But as little as 500 international units will keep a kid from having that. But a lot of kids don't get that. But that's not going to do anything to keep your immune system strong. You need to take 5,000 units a day. If if you weigh less than 120 pounds, then 4,000 might be enough. I've had two people in 35 years of practice who were getting 50 to 90 in that target range of their blood without supplementing vitamin D. And they were both people that sunbathe every day, most of the year. That's really, really, really rare. One among 10,000 probably. So most people, it's just easier to take a supplement, 5,000 units. So vitamin K is functionally similar to K1, abundant in spinach and kale, a primary blood clotting factor, made from fermented cabbage in Korea, or none of the above. Which one do you think? None of the above. It is different from K1. K1 is abundant in spinach and kale. K2 is not. It comes from fermented soy. It is not a primary blood clotting factor. K2 is. If you've ever heard of Coumadin, warfarin, that works by uh, blocking the absorption and utilization of vitamin K1. So that's why you can't take vitamin K when you're on warfarin. They even tell you to not eat salads because you don't want they're blocking K to keep your blood thin. K is a clotting factor. If you have a bleeding stroke or any kind of bleeding condition, they want to get your clotting factors up. They often give you a high dose of vitamin K, even an injection of vitamin K. K1 is a clotting factor. It's not made from fermented cabbage in Korea. It's made from fermented soy in Japan. All right, so people with osteopenia and osteoporosis can restore and maintain bone strength and flexibility and prevent fractures without drugs. True or false? Absolutely true. Most people don't know that that's true, but you do. So tell your friends. Any questions? Yes.
Can you circle back on the vitamin C? Which is the one that you can take if you have stomach issues?
So if you have trouble, and the dose matters. If you're just taking 1,000, most people might be fine. But if you have an autoimmune condition, chronic infections, cancer, something where for which liver disease, for which it is a good idea to take maybe 2,000 or 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C 3 times a day. Or if you have a severe infection, I might recommend that. And if that bothers your stomach, then you can get buffered vitamin C. There's lots of different forms of that. They make, like the one I have is, I think, magnesium buffered with calcium and magnesium. So it's calcium ascorbate, magnesium ascorbate. There's lots of different forms. But when you get the buffered form, it's basically makes it neutral. So the ascorbic acid is not going to irritate the mucosa in your stomach that might be a little irritated. If you have an ulcer or a pre-ulcer. Your stomach has strong acid. Your esophagus has mucus to protect it from acid. Your intestines. But when you get an ulcer or when you get GERD, when you get any place where you get that burning, it's because that mucus is become thin, and it's never the same every day because the cells around that bald spot are still making mucus, and it might cover it up one day and it might not the next day. So those symptoms come and go. But yeah, you can take high doses of vitamin C, a buffered form, even if you have that issue. Yeah. So you can take, so people that want to take high doses and don't want to take a whole bunch of capsules every day, you can get a powdered form and just mix it with water and a little sweetener of some kind. Designs for Health makes a really nice one that's 2,500 milligrams in a powder that already has some nice orange flavor and a little stevia, and it even fizzes. It's called C Plus BioFizz, and that's easy to mix up and just drink. And also for people that need high doses or have that problem, you can get liposomal vitamin C, which is vitamin C that's put it in an ultrasound machine, or like one of those ultrasound things that they clean jewelry and stuff with. They shake it up with lecithin so that the vitamin C becomes bound in little liposomes, little fat bubbles. and that makes it cross cell membranes more readily and easier to digest, and doesn't have that acidic effect. The acid doesn't touch your membranes. Any other questions? Yeah.
And getting back to osteoporosis and all that, when like let's say you have an injury and all of a sudden like your neck just keeps popping, what is the popping sound when your bones keep popping?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of people confuse osteoporosis and osteoarthritis. They sound kind of similar. There's no relationship between them at all. Osteoporosis is porous bones. Osteo means bone. Porosis means porous. Osteoarthritis means bone inflammation of the joints. So arthritis is inflammation of the joints. Arthro means joint, itis means inflammation. So any kind of arthritis is inflamed joints, usually from trauma, from poor posture, oftentimes just because of lack of nutrients and lack of motion in those joints. So all the joints in your body need nutrients to heal and repair them. The smallest blood vessels that supply your joints don't go directly into the joint tissue. They form little capillaries around the capsule that surrounds each joint. And through normal motion, bending your knees or bending your spine, those nutrients get in and out through that normal motion. If you restrict that motion and instead those joints can't move anymore, then instead of regenerating, that tissue begins to degenerate. So that is what happens when you have degenerative joint disease. That is what causes osteoarthritis, the quote unquote normal arthritis that we all get when we age. But nobody gets it uniformly in every joint in their body as they get older. They get it in some joints and nothing in the other ones. So you only get it in joints that aren't moving properly. So if you can't get the nutrients in, if you can't get the waste products out, then instead of rebuilding and maintaining healthy joint tissue, it will degenerate and cause arthritis. And that's inflamed, painful. So your body tries to grow calcium into the ligaments around that, and that's what causes those spurs in your spine, in your feet, anywhere where your joint is inflamed. Then the bone will grow little spurs into that joint to try and stabilize that chronically inflamed area. So that's why it's called osteobone arthritis, of bone and joints. The joints become filled with bone, basically, or surrounded by bone. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
No, I'll get right back.
Remind me.
Back. I had a really nasty fall.
Oh, you asked about the sound.
My neck
the popping sound.
A lot of popping.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the joints, I talked about the capsule. So a joint there's no place anywhere in your body where one bone even touches another. So there's no such thing as, the only way to crack a bone is if you have cracking any bone is a fracture. When you crack your knuckles, that's nothing to do with your bones. The joints that separate and cushion all of your bone articulations usually have a synovial membrane around that joint tissue. There's a few exceptions, but most of them. And that fluid, and that synovial fluid inside that capsule, has nitrogen and other gases suspended in it. So when you crack your knuckles or move any bone, then it cracks. That sound is made by nitrogen gas escaping from that fluid under pressure. So it's totally harmless. It doesn't increase your risk of arthritis to crack your knuckles. In your neck, though, if you're doing this or doing some kind of fast motion to crack your own back over and over and over again, then you can't overdo that. You can even overdo regular chiropractic manipulations because it becomes hypermobile, less stable, and then you can increase the risk of inflammation down the road. It's also better than doing nothing to get any kind of adjustment once in a while if you're stiff, because otherwise your joints are going to have a more rapid arthritic degeneration process. So it's always better to do something to get all of your joints moving. It doesn't matter if you turn your neck slowly or just normal body movements and something pops. That just means you still have tension in some of those joints. It would be better if you didn't have that tension, but it's harmless when that tension releases and makes a popping sound. So one of the goals I have, because I'm a non-force chiropractor as well, when I'm helping people release tension in their neck, it's harmless to hear the pop, but eventually when everything's working better, you also shouldn't hear the pop. If your joints are moving properly, then they won't create that tension that needs to release and create a popping sound.
What nutrients would you recommend body
for joints? So the most common things you hear about nutrients for joints are things like chondroitin sulfate and glucosamine and MSM, sulfur donors. These are all things that help your body build joint tissue. But I never recommend them because in my experience, a lot of people have already tried them. They usually work for about 3 months, maybe a few months more than that, and then they usually feel good for 3 months or maybe 4 or 5 months, and then it just plateaus and you don't feel any effect anymore because You can get most of those things from food. If you eat a generally good diet, you can get those same things from food. The thing that causes the biggest limitation is you need enzymes to break down that old tissue. Just like with the osteoclast to clear the old bone, the osteoblast to build new tissue, you can get the nutrients you need to build joint tissue from food. You need enzymes to clear away the old tissue. So scar tissue, when you cut your skin, you get this random fibers that bridge that tear and start to heal, like I have right here. And then your body slowly uses proteolytic enzymes, protein digesting enzymes, to break down that fibrin and then form strong linear tissue like this as time goes by in your muscles, in your bones, in your skin, any part of your body. So your body makes those enzymes throughout your lifespan, but like a few other things, production peaks in your 30s and then it slows down. As you get older, you need more of it. That's why an infant or a teenager can fall down a flight of stairs, get up, shake it off, and keep going. And a couple days later, it'll all be healed because they have abundance of those enzymes to break down, and it's very easy. As you get older, you have less of that. So the product that I recommend, the nattokinase, has been known about for years for doing the same thing in blood vessels. The scars that form in the lining of your blood vessels that result in a clot and plaques forming is made of fibrin, the scar tissue protein, calcium, and cholesterol. So you can have high cholesterol if you don't have a lot of tears, which are caused by inflammation, then you won't form a lot of plaques and they won't be very big. Well, nattokinase can also disrupt and reverse that scar tissue and reduce your risk of heart disease from that process. Vitamin K does that, and nattokinase does that. So nattokinase is well known for that. There's another what's called systemic enzyme, an enzyme that works throughout your body, contrasted with digestive enzymes that are just for increasing your ability to digest your food. Nattokinase for the vascular system. Serrapeptase has been known, researched, utilized for several decades now for joint tissue. Serrapeptase comes from silkworms. Silk is the strongest natural fiber. If you shoot any other fiber with a bullet, it will tear through it. If you hang a strand of silk and shoot it, it will deflect. So a silkworm needs a really strong enzyme to digest its way out of a silk cocoon. And the enzyme it makes in its gut is serrapeptase. So that was discovered several decades ago. I used that a lot more than nattokinase. But then about 5 or 6 years ago, again, I forget whether it was right before or after COVID, Designs for Health basically reverse engine. And that was both of those were really expensive, about $1 a pill. So if you're only taking one a day, maybe not so bad. But a lot of times people need to take 2 or 3 or 4 a day in the beginning. So they developed this product where they basically reverse engineered both serrapeptase and nattokinase and combined them into one product. And it's only about 50 cents per pill. So it's really affordable. I've got almost all of my patients on it. Anyone with arthritis or any other inflammatory process, any risk of heart disease, I recommend anybody with those things. How many people does that not describe over the age of 50 or 60, right? So, and everyone loves it. It's the best thing. It works. It slowly helps your body break down the scar tissue that drives the inflammation in your joints. So eventually your joints start to slowly, very slowly, but forever continue to heal a little bit, very slowly. But that also reduces the inflammation, so it reduces the pain. Nattocerezymes. Victoria, you want to grab one of those and we'll pass it around. You can take a look at it. Nattocerezymes from Designs for Health. So other companies make nattokinase. Other companies, especially Vitalzyme was the big one that makes serrapeptase. Designs for Health is the only company I know that make the combo.
And would that be good for injuries?
Any kind of injury. Absolutely. Anytime you injure something, any kind of trauma, your body's going to lay down random fiber, fibrin. It's like collagen, similar type of protein. This random matrix to bridge the tear, to start any part that's torn, to bridge the gap. That's why it's important to rest, because if you start that and then you tear it again, you start over and over and over. And same thing with bones. A lot of people have fractures in their feet that never heal because you're walking around on your feet all day long. I've had people that had a fracture in their foot a year ago. They x-rayed it and it still hasn't healed because they never stopped moving their foot. It wasn't bad enough. A hairline fracture wasn't bad enough to wear a cast. But I asked them, are you taking vitamin D? Are you taking vitamin K? Are you getting adequate protein in your diet? No, none of those things. Get bioavailable calcium. Give them all 4 of those things. Fracture heals in a few weeks. I had a couple people that injured their shoulders usually from 2 of them. Both of them were skiing injuries. Hit something. Shoulder hadn't healed. Almost 6 months, 8 months, 9 months later. Gave them the same nutrients. Healed up fine in a few weeks. So anybody who has a slow healing fracture, taking those things will definitely help it heal faster as well. And with any injury, taking nano-cerezymes will help your body heal that faster. Muscle, bone, skin. I had a guy with lacerated his kidney. He got hit really hard in a softball game. Lacerated his kidney. They went to the hospital. They wanted to remove it. You got another kidney? People donate their kidneys all the time. He said, "Well, I'd kind of like to keep this one if I can." And he came in, and I gave him a high dose 4 capsules a day of the nano-cerezymes and a glandular product for the kidney. So simply kidney. It's just ground up organs from young, healthy animals, pigs and cows. That has everything your kidney cells need to heal and make more quickly, as many as possible. Maximize the ability for your kidney to make new kidney cells. 3 months later, they rescanned it. It was totally fine. I've had three people that had at least three that had some kind of stricture in their esophagus, Barrett's esophagus, that you get these rings of scar tissue from acid reflux or other things that make it difficult to swallow. So I had one woman in particular, the worst one. She would swallow food and it would just come back up. She'd have to regurgitate. And it wasn't like a piece of steak. Piece of steak, your muscles can grab a hold of. She could eat meat. Bread would cause her to cough that back up because it just wouldn't go down. So there's a narrowing, and it's difficult for the muscles to push things through. Well, I put her on nano-cerezymes, and after a month, she went from almost every day, like 4 or 5 times a week, to once a week after about a month, and after about 3 months, it was fine. She could swallow anything she wanted. And years later, maybe it happens once or twice a year. So the enzymes help break down that scar tissue, even if it's old. And any part of the body. I've had other people with lungs from smoking and emphysema and improve their breathing. The tests that you measure breathing with from removing the scar tissue with that. Question in the back.
So if you're not a big vegetable eater and you don't like broccoli or you never touch it, you don't want one of these filled with calcium carbonate.
Right. If you have a risk of osteoporosis, you want to take a good calcium. The best one is reacted calcium from orthomolecular products because it has 4 different types of calcium all combined in one. There are other good calciums. Just don't take calcium carbonate. Yeah. And a good multivitamin has a little bit of all those minerals, the alpha base that I talked about.
One more thing, you were saying serapeptase.
Yes.
Does that have the same as the NATO?
Serapeptase and nattokinase are both systemic enzymes. One comes from silkworms, the serapeptase, and nattokinase comes from fermented soy. Natocerezymes has basically both. Okay. It's not literally either one of them. They reverse engineered it and came up with an analog that works the same way. I've had patients, I still have some patients that I do the straight serapeptase. Again, those are usually like $100, $200 a bottle, $1 per pill. And most of them, when I test them, the natocerezymes works better and it's less expensive. So it's a win-win because they work synergistically. If you take nattokinase, it also will help with your joints. If you take serapeptase, it will also help with your blood vessels. They work together. All right. Does anybody need to get going? I'm happy to stay as long as you want to answer questions, but if anybody needs to go, feel free to. And Ann?
Yeah, I just had a question. So, teeth are bones, but does all of this apply to your teeth as far as losing
losing the bone in your teeth?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Very good point. Yeah. So usually you're losing the bone in your teeth from gingivitis, from periodontal disease, from if you have too much bacteria in your gums, that causes the bones to break down. So that's why you need to get your teeth cleaned every 6 months to stop that. So you don't necessarily need to supplement something to keep the bones in your mouth strong, keep your teeth from falling out. You need to keep your gums healthy, and then your bones will stay healthy. And you can even recover. But if you have weakness in the bones, then supplementing these things will help build that back up too. Absolutely. Anywhere you need to rebuild bone, cartilage, muscle tissue, you can enhance that, maximize it by taking those same nutrients. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. Next month will be fatigue. There are 12 most commonly overlooked causes of fatigue. I've been talking about this on the radio show. The past episodes will eventually be up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. But yeah, there's 12 really commonly overlooked causes of fatigue. Most people, one of the most common reasons people come to me is some kind of tiredness, lack of energy, exhaustion for no reason. You're exercising the same, you're eating the same, you're enjoying your life. For whatever reason, 2 years ago you felt great, 5 years ago or 6 months ago, now you're just tired all the time. Why? Well, just what's the one reason? What's the one thing I can do to have more energy? There isn't one. You can drink coffee. That doesn't give you more energy. It feels like you have more energy. Then it wears out your adrenals and you feel worse. So it's never one thing. Fatigue is never caused by one thing. It's caused by almost always 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things that are little things, which add up and fly under the radar. They're not outside those medical ranges. They're within those medical ranges. Borderline, subclinical, less than medical thyroid disease, less than medical iron deficiency anemia, B12 anemia, pre-diabetes, low vitamin D. There's a whole host of really common ones. I actually made a website just about that called Fatigue Free Living, and I talked about some patients that we helped with that. And as soon as I finished the 12 most commonly overlooked causes of fatigue, I came up with 12 more. You know, there's a lot of them. And if you don't check all those things, then it can usually be very difficult to figure out what's actually causing it. If you do check all those things, it's very easy to get back the energy that you should have and feel like yourself again. All right. So yeah, tell all your friends, show up next first Wednesday. What is that? May 6th. We're